Okay, so the World Handicap System. Now, I don't think it's as complicated as maybe it first sounds, especially when you're reading about it. So let me explain. I'll try and be brief. So as a bit of background, this system was basically introduced to kind of unify golf a little bit, to ensure that there's one single measurement for golfing ability across the world, wherever this system is implemented. So for those of you who don't know, and I'll be honest, I was one of them, before this system was introduced, there were a load of different handicap systems across the world. So there was one in the US, there was one in South Africa, there was one in Argentina, there was a different one in Europe. The one in Europe was different from the one which is used in the UK and Ireland. So all these different handicap systems came to their handicap number, so the final index number, in a subtly different way. What this new system has done is repeal all of that and made sure that everyone has their handicap calculated in the exact same way. So the big question is, how is your handicap index calculated? When you record a score, your score is then converted into what they're calling a differential. The differential is calculated by taking the course rating, subtracting that number from your gross score on the day, so the number that you shot, the actual overall number, and then timesing that number by, again, what they call the neutral slope rating. So that's a number which is exactly the same for everyone. That number is standard, it never changes. That is 113. It never changes, that is a constant. And then the number that you get from that calculation is then divided by the slope rating of the course that you were playing that day. And obviously slope rating changes depending on the tees that you play from, the conditions that you play in, all of these kind of factors which have to be brought into the equation are done so through slope rating. So to put that into kind of a real world example, if we took my course, Woodbury Park, say I went out and shot an 87 playing from my usual tees. The course rating of Woodbury Park is apparently 70.6. So you take 87 minus 70.6 gives you 16.4. Then you times 16.4 by the neutral slope rating, which is 113. Again, never changes, that number is a constant. And that gives you 1853.2. Then that number is divided by the slope rating of the course on that day. The slope rating for Woodbury Park, there or thereabouts, is 128. So if you divide 1853.2 by 128, you get 14.5. So that 14.5, that number, which is the final calculation, is then added to a pool of the last 20 rounds which I've recorded. And then from that pool of 20, you take your 8 best rounds, and then you average out that score. So you take your 8 rounds, you add them together, divide them by 8. And then the final number that you're left with is your handicap index. And at the end of the day, you don't really need to concern yourself with the calculation, because there are calculators online which can do it for you, or generally speaking, you can submit your scores to the club and they might be able to do it for you anyway. So in reality, all you really need to worry about is your gross score. And then everything else will fall into place. All the heavy lifting can be done for you. And that's why, in reality, the whole thing isn't that complicated. There are a few other things to note about the system. Firstly, your scores don't expire. So you don't have to play a certain amount of rounds during the year to ensure that you keep your handicap. The only caveat to that is you have to be a member of a course in order to keep your handicap. The other thing to note under this system is when you're first getting your handicap, you have to submit verified cards from 54 holes of golf. So, another handicapped golfer has to sign off cards, and that could be from 3 rounds of 18, it could be 6 rounds of 9, or it could be a combination of both. But the subtle difference is, because you don't have a pool of 20 scores to get your handicap from, the numbers are adjusted relative to how many cards you have submitted. So the overall handicap number you get given shouldn't change because of the way it's adjusted. It does mean that the calculations going on behind the scenes are slightly different. And finally, the maximum handicap you can have under the World Handicap System is 54. Now that's been specifically put in place as a slightly higher ceiling than we've seen in previous handicap systems, to be more inclusive, to allow people who are not as good at golf to get a golf handicap, and then they can compete in competitions and all that kind of jazz, which I think is great. It's a really, really positive step. So that's all I'm going to say. This has been a really brief overview of the World Handicap System and kind of how it works. Whether or not it changes your handicap, I'm not sure. I'd be really interested to know. It shouldn't, and if it does, they shouldn't be going up or down by any more than maybe one stroke at a maximum. So other than that, I will leave a couple of links in the description below to some of the articles which I found quite useful on the topic, just in case you want to read a little bit more about it. Right, that is all from me. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you did, please hit that subscribe button, like the video, make sure you don't miss out on any of the reviews, any of the vlogs that I have coming out on a weekly basis. So until the next one, cheers guys.